A bill that would legalize assisted suicide in New York State moved one step closer to becoming law on Monday after a Democratic-controlled Senate advanced the bill by a vote of 35 to 27. The legislation would allow a person to be prescribed life-ending drugs if they have an incurable and irreversible illness that will result in death within 6 months. 2 doctors must sign off on the prescription, as well as 2 witnesses, to ensure the patient is not being coerced. While some senators have praised the bill for its supposed focus on death with dignity, opponents say those safeguards are not enough.
It isn't about controlling the disease or controlling the pain. It's about having control at the end of your life. Our medical profession has prolonged our lives, prolonged our deaths, and people want some form of control.
Who is this assisted suicide bill really helping? And who is it quietly abandoning? I'll tell you. It's abandoning the vulnerable, our seniors, those living with disabilities, and those in their darkest moments.
The legislation is now headed to Governor Kathy Hochul's desk. If she signs the bill, New York will join 11 other states and the District of Columbia with similar laws. A leading New York Catholic voice against the assisted suicide bill joins us now from Albany. Dennis Poust is executive director of the New York State Catholic Conference. Dennis, thanks for being with us. Assisted suicide is legal in a dozen U.S. jurisdictions already. But what makes this New York bill especially egregious if passed?
Well, I'd argue that they're all especially egregious, but like New York likes to be the best or the worst in everything. And this is clearly the worst assisted suicide bill in the country. One reason is, unlike every other bill that has passed, there is no waiting period at all. So you could get a terminal diagnosis from your doctor, you'll be grief-stricken, you'll be in despair, and you could at that moment request assisted suicide drugs from that doctor and then from a subsequent doctor next door. And the next day, you could be ending your life. It's egregious. And what's more, there's absolutely no requirement even for a psychological evaluation. So, everyone who gets a terminal diagnosis has a moment of depression. We all know the 5 stages of grief, and depression is one of them. But the doctors don't have to even go there. They could just prescribe the pills if you're of sound mind.
And of course, a diagnosis is not final. God is in control after all. Dennis, the bill is headed to Governor Hochul's desk. Governor Hochul is Catholic. Has the New York State Catholic Conference or any of the bishops of New York spoken to the governor about this bill?
Well, we intend to, we have been in communication with her office. And, I know that Cardinal Dolan did have some brief words with her in person, just at a parade. It wasn't anything formal. But we anticipate speaking directly to the governor and her staff, but not really making so much a religious Catholic argument. This bill is just bad public policy. It's bad for people with disabilities, vulnerable people, people of color who tend to live in medically underserved areas and already get sort of cheated in the healthcare system. So there are a lot of good reasons for the governor to veto this that have really nothing to do with her Catholic faith.
Dennis, proponents of the bill say this is about bodily autonomy. What's your response to that?
Well, Catherine, to that I would say, this bill is about taking people whose bodily autonomy has failed them and killing them. So it's the furthest thing from about bodily autonomy. It's kind of the opposite. We're saying that you no longer have utility if you are disabled or sick. People who are ill lose bodily autonomy, and that's when people request suicide drugs. We've heard in Oregon and other states. That's the most important thing, the first thing that they cite: loss of independence, loss of bodily autonomy. So we need to really work with people to understand that they don't lose their human dignity when they lose their autonomy, when they lose their ability to control their bodies the way they used to when they were younger.
Were you surprised that New York passed this bill, especially in light of what we're seeing coming out of Canada right now? Canada's medical assistance in dying program is now the 5th leading cause of death. Shouldn't New York lawmakers be concerned of that same pattern potentially happening here?
Absolutely, and Canada is our neighbor, and we border Canada. The governor's home city of Buffalo borders Canada, and Actually, I have to admit, I was surprised, and it's my job to not be surprised at things that move in the legislature. But I really didn't think they would go there. I didn't think that they had the votes for the longest time, and they didn't. So we're trying to figure out like what changed. But I can say that a lot of Democrats who control both houses of the legislature have very serious problems with it. 21 Democrats in the state assembly voted against it. Most of them people of color. 6 Democrats in the Senate voted against it out of 41 Democrats in that chamber. So there's significant pushback even among Democrats. And Governor Hochul, I would hope, would see that and say, wait, this isn't so much a partisan issue. This isn't so clear cut.
Dennis, considering the topic that we are discussing, do you have a message for anyone who may be considering physician-assisted suicide themselves?
Yeah, well, first of all, we hope that doesn't come to that in New York, but I know your reach is national. And I would say that we understand the fear, and no one wants you to suffer. And the last thing I ever do is talk about things like the redemptive power of suffering. I'm not a theologian, right? We don't want anyone to suffer. We want people to avail themselves of hospice care. There are ways to control pain. There are ways to pass from this life to the next in peace and love and with caring people around you. I would strongly urge people to not despair and to let God take you when he's good and ready.
Dennis, be assured of our prayers for New Yorkers and for you and your work. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate you letting me spread the word.
Absolutely. Thank you.